All right, he goes in for the handshake, and oh, he no-sold him on that one. What? Let's do this. Assalamu alaikum, what's going on everybody? This recently happened on Dana White's Contender series, whereby an Israeli opponent named... I don't care what his name was. He was set to fight his opponent from Afghanistan, Javid Basharat. Now, I've seen this news go viral across many Muslim social media accounts. With good reason, obviously. But there were some inaccuracies in the way this was being reported, and some things that I think people just didn't pay attention to. And quite a few assumptions were being made. So, let's break this down. Number one. I saw a lot of accounts, almost all of them, refer to this Israeli fighter as a UFC fighter. They're saying UFC fighter did this, UFC fighter did that. And although that's not a big deal, it is a little inaccurate. That event was not in and of itself the UFC. That was an event held by UFC president Dana White, whereby the winner gets an opportunity to win a UFC contract. Number two, moving on to the face-off. The Israeli man went in for a handshake, and Javid no-sold him on that. From one end, this could have been done for political reasons. Perhaps he didn't want to shake the hand of an Israeli Zionist who probably served in the IDF and who may or may not be described as a child killer, allegedly. Okay. At best, he's an adult killer. But, on the other hand, and this is something that people weren't mentioning, the Israeli opponent missed weight by 3 pounds.
Well, why did he refuse a handshake? I don't think it was any kind of political reason. I think he just decided that he didn't want to shake his hand because the Israeli gentleman had missed weight by up to 3 pounds, which is pretty bad.
When people go to fight, be it in boxing and kickboxing and mixed martial arts and wrestling and other martial arts, they typically do a weigh-in, and both opponents agree to fight at a certain weight class, and they have to weigh in that day or the day before. And when an opponent misses weight, depending on by how much weight they miss, the fight could be canceled, or the person who missed weight has to give up some of their purse. But all in all, the Israeli opponent missed weight by 3 pounds, which is disrespectful and quite unprofessional. So that could have been the reason why Javid decided not to shake his hand. More on this later. But then, oh, this gets better. This happened. Number 3.
No problem.
Hold up.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Did the Israeli man, the man who hails from a state that was created on the ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinians, just accuse another man of being a terrorist simply because he's from Afghanistan? Wait, let me just get this straight. Did the Israeli man, who probably served in the IDF and killed Palestinians, men, women, children, and furthered an illegal occupation of an already oppressed people, the Palestinians, did that man just call somebody else a terrorist? And if anyone here is new to my videos and they're like, what are you talking about? Israel, Palestine, what's happening here? Refer to any of my videos about Israeli war crimes against Palestinians. Links will be below. And for everybody who's just about to comment saying, well, in Israel, everybody has to serve in the IDF, otherwise they'll be thrown in jail. To that, I say, there are those who've gone on record who prefer to go to jail than to further oppress Palestinians and kill innocent people. And then there are those who don't want to go to jail and they reluctantly serve in the IDF and they further oppress Palestinians, and perhaps even kill Palestinian men, women, and children. But they're ashamed of it. And then there's this guy. I'ma just go out on a limb and say, if you can call your opponent a terrorist just because they're from Afghanistan, you are probably someone who relishes in killing Palestinians and serving in the IDF. Just a guess. Allegedly. Anyways, so this fight eventually goes down, and Javid beat the brakes off of his Israeli opponent and submitted him in the 3rd round.
Tight. He's gonna march into it.
There's the tap. The finish streak is intact. Javid Basharat by submission in the 3rd.
All good in the hood, right? Apparently this is where all the news ended from most of the accounts that I follow. But let me tell you, there's way more to talk about. Apparently, after the fight, according to Dana White, the UFC president, Javid did eventually shake hands with his Israeli opponent.
And I can point out too, if you noticed at the end of the fight, the beginning of the fight, these guys were both hostile. At the end of the fight, they shook hands and hugged.
Which is why, from the very beginning, I doubt that he refused to shake his hands at the weigh-ins because his opponent was Israeli and a Zionist, I'm assuming, but rather because he missed weight. And in all the pre-fight and post-fight interviews, Ravid didn't even mention the word Israel, didn't mention the word Zionism. He just talked about the fact that the Israeli called him a terrorist, and that was disrespectful. And he was going to teach him during the fight. And then Dana White was asked about the terrorist comments. And he said this.
The face-off yesterday, the terrorist comment.
Are we going to do anything? It got done tonight. You know what I mean? It's the beautiful thing about this sport. I say it all the time. This is not a nice sport. This is a very rough sport. We say a lot of mean things to each other, a lot of, and justice gets served at the end of the day.
And quite frankly, we saw a lot worse being said during the Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov pre-fight conference. And the UFC just used everything that Conor said to promote the event. So I would just say, don't expect much. And of course, there's a double standard in society. When the whole thing was happening between Conor McGregor and Khabib, Conor McGregor said some nasty things about Dagestan. He said some nasty things about Khabib's wife. He mocked Islam. He called Khabib's manager or agent a terrorist. But of course, all good in the hood, just use it to promote the event. But when Conor McGregor used an offensive gay slur, it starts with the letter F and it rhymes with Saget. There was a massive uproar and Conor issued an apology. So in society, at the very least, there is a double standard. Preferably, I prefer none of the above take place. In addition to all of this, a great point was raised by Luke Thomas, who's the co-host of Morning Combat, regarding what the consequences would have been if someone yelled a slur in the UFC during a UFC event whereby they were being offensive towards the LGBT community, if someone yelled the N-word towards their opponent, if someone said something anti-Semitic. And he raised some questions about how far should the UFC allow trash talk to go without drawing any lines, any boundaries, any borders. Where is the line? What is too far? What is too much?
What if someone came out into his face audibly, or maybe even in interviews, said Nazi slogans and gave a Nazi salute to his face? The UFC is going to be okay with this? Really? You're going to be okay with a Jewish opponent being taunted with Nazi salutes, maybe even Nazi imagery and Nazi statements? Your brand wants to be associated with that? This is not about political correctness. It's not a question of, do we have to find a nicer way to talk to each other? It's a question of, and I keep going back to it, and this is true not just for UFC, it's true for Bellator, it's true for PBC in boxing, it's true for Top Rank, it's true for everybody. The question is who you want to be in business with. And I agree with you to a large extent, BC, which is, dude, this is the fight game in boxing or combat sports. If you can't fight in a cage or a ring in this country, I don't know what you can do. I'm not calling for anyone's license. I didn't even call for this guy to get released. But I don't think that folks have woken up to the fact, number one, it's not a question of we want to police speech. It's like, dude, do you want to be in business with this person? He got lucky. The whole UFC got lucky that this didn't bubble up to a greater scandal. Because I can imagine that Disney and other third-party validators like DraftKings or whoever, if they had gotten wind of this and it had become a bigger story, this whole thing would have changed instantly. And this idea that there's no line, really? So you can have a fighter go around and call all the members of your black African-American staff, he can call them each one by one the N-word, he can call his opponent the N-word, to his face audibly in interviews, and there's no, we want to be in business with this person. This is an obviously deranged worldview. Who on earth would ever say that's a ethical way to look at life? There's no line you can cross by taunting and saying these kinds of things.
Personally, I don't care what the UFC does. But the thing that I hate the most is when there is a double standard. All in all, I'll leave you with this. To my knowledge, the Israeli man did not apologize for calling his opponent a terrorist. And quite frankly, my message to him is, if he truly wants to find a real terrorist, all he needs to do is to look himself in the mirror as soon as he can see from his swollen eyes. And of course, before I go, I leave you with this. Free Palestine. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and share this video. Support me by subscribing to my channel. And until next time, I'm that Muslim guy. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you.